I was born in a village where dreams never left the soil, where books were a luxury, and the stars were something we only looked at during long nights in the fields. My father's hands were cracked from years of farming. My mother stitched torn clothes so we could survive. Nobody believed a boy like me could ever leave that life behind. But deep inside I carried a secret, a dream so wild it scared me. One day I would touch the stars. Life in my village was simple, maybe even too simple. Days began before the sun touched the horizon. The rooster crowed, and my father was already out in the fields. His back bent, his body tired, but his spirit unbroken. My mother lit the stove, made roti from the little wheat we had, and hummed songs that belonged to her childhood. Songs of hope that barely reached beyond our mud walls. I was the youngest of 3. My elder brother worked alongside my father. My sister helped mother with chores. I was the only one who carried a school bag on my shoulders, a bag that was more often empty than full. My family wanted me to study. At least that's what they said. But deep down, every time my father looked at me with pride, I also saw something else in his eyes. Fear. Fear that books wouldn't feed us. Fear that education was a gamble we couldn't afford. Still, he never stopped me. "Go, Beta. Read," he would say softly. "Maybe your pen will do what my plow could not." The school in my village was nothing but 4 broken walls and a teacher who came when he felt like it. The blackboard was chipped. Chalk was scarce. And most of my classmates were too tired to learn after helping their families in the fields. But for me, it was different. Every equation on the board, every map in the geography book, every line of English felt like a doorway to somewhere bigger, somewhere brighter. And at night, when the day's work was done, I'd lie on the charpai under the open sky. The stars stared back at me like old friends, distant, silent, but always there. My brother teased me. "What are you staring at? You think they'll fall into your lap?" I smiled quietly, because he couldn't hear what I heard. The stars whispered to me. They called me. But life has a way of pulling dreams back to the ground. My family gatherings were small, just neighbors and relatives sitting together, drinking chai. The conversations were always the same. Crop failures, debts, weddings we couldn't afford. No one spoke of dreams. No one dared. "Hope is for the rich," my uncle once said with a bitter laugh. I didn't argue, but inside I disagreed with every bone in my body. Then came the day that changed everything. I was 13, sitting on the roof of our house with a torn science book I'd borrowed from a friend in the city. On the page was a picture of a rocket, tall, powerful, breaking through the atmosphere. My heart raced, my palms shook, and that's when my cousin spotted me. "Studying again," he mocked. "Do you think you'll fly to the moon from here? Don't waste your time. You'll end up in the fields like the rest of us." His words burned, not because they were cruel, but because a small part of me feared he was right. That night, as I lay under the stars, something inside me shifted. The cracks of envy, doubt, and fear had been planted. My cousin's laughter echoed in my mind, louder than the silence of the night sky. And in that silence, I whispered to myself, "One day, I'll prove them wrong." That was the beginning, the first hint, that something was about to break. The next morning began like every other. The sun heavy over the fields, the smell of wet soil in the air. My father handed me a small bundle of wheat to take to the mill. "Work before play," he said, though his eyes softened when they landed on my school bag. He wanted me to balance both worlds. But I knew deep down, he worried which one I would eventually choose. School, I was different. While others slouched in their benches, waiting for the bell, I leaned forward, hungry for every word. Even the teacher noticed. "You," he said once, pointing at me. "You don't belong here. Your mind is somewhere else." He meant it as a compliment, but to me it felt like a curse. Because at home, belonging was everything. My brother carried the weight of the family on his shoulders. He was strong, practical, grounded. The opposite of me. He didn't understand why I buried myself in books. What will numbers give you? Can you eat equations? Can you plant them? He teased. Sometimes it was light-hearted. Sometimes it carried sharpness. My sister, on the other hand, understood me better. When chores were done, she'd slip me small pieces of paper. Math problems she copied from an old book. "Solve this," she'd whisper with a grin. She believed in me quietly without saying much. But even with her support, the tension was there. Like cracks in glass you couldn't ignore. At family gatherings, uncles and aunts would question my father. Why waste money on his studies? Let him work. He's another pair of hands. My father always defended me. He's different. Maybe he will do what we never could. But I saw the doubt in his eyes. I saw the way he looked at the barren fields, the unpaid loans, the hungry mouths. His words carried faith, but his heart carried fear. And I carried both. The days turned into years. My books grew heavier, my world larger. I learned of planets, of galaxies, of things far beyond our village. Yet, every discovery made my reality feel smaller, harsher. At night, I'd still lie under the sky. The stars gave me peace. But also a question. Could someone like me, barefoot, poor, invisible, ever touch something so far? The cracks widened the day I overheard my parents. They thought I was asleep, but their voices carried through the thin walls. "We can't afford his books anymore," my mother whispered. "The money is gone." My father sighed deeply. "I know. But if we stop now, all his years will be wasted." "And what if he never makes it?" My mother's voice trembled. "What if we give everything and still he ends up back in the fields?" Silence. Then my father's voice, low and tired. "Then at least he will know he tried." I buried my face in my pillow that night, torn between gratitude and guilt. They believed in me enough to sacrifice. But what if my mother was right? What if I failed them all? The next day at school, the teacher brought a newspaper clipping. It was about a man who had gone from a small Indian village to working at NASA. The class barely paid attention. But I read every line like it was scripture. My hands shook as I held the paper. My heart thumped. It was possible. Someone like me had done it. That night, I didn't just stare at the stars. Promised them, "I will find you, no matter what it takes." But promises come with weight. And not everyone wanted me to rise. My cousin, the same one who had mocked me, returned from the city one summer. He had studied for a while but dropped out. "Books are useless," he said loudly during dinner, glancing at me. "You waste time. Better learn real work before it's too late." His words stung, but worse was the way others nodded. For the first time, I saw my family shift uncomfortably. Their silence was louder than his insults. That was the first real fracture. The moment I realized not everyone wanted me to succeed. And yet, inside me, the fire only grew. The setup of my life was laid bare, torn between two worlds. One of soil, sweat, and survival. The other of books, stars, and impossible dreams. And somewhere in between, the fragile love of a family who wanted the best for me, but feared what it might cost. I didn't know it then. But the balance was about to break. The season of exams arrived. The whole village buzzing with whispers. Results were everything. They decided who you were. Whether you were worthy of leaving or condemned to stay. I studied under a flickering lamp. The kind that went out when the wind grew too strong. My books smelled of dust and sweat. My fingers stained with ink. My father peeked in late at night, eyes tired but proud. "Sleep," he'd whisper. But I couldn't. Sleep felt like a luxury I couldn't afford. The morning of the exam, my brother pressed a rough piece of jaggery into my hand. "For strength," he said, though his voice carried something else. Resentment. Maybe. He had worked in the fields all week while I studied. His hands were cracked and bleeding. Mine were soft, holding a pen. He didn't say it. But I felt the weight of his sacrifice. I entered the exam hall trembling. The paper opened, and for a moment the words blurred. Fear gripped me. What if I failed? What if all the nights, all the hopes collapsed here? Then, I remembered the newspaper article. The man from the small village. I steadied myself. My pen moved, slowly at first, then with confidence. When the results came weeks later, my name was at the top. First in the district. My father cried. My mother hid her face in her dupatta. My sister danced like a child. For one shining moment. It felt like destiny was bending in my favor. But light draws shadows. At the village tea shop, I overheard them talking. Good for him. But what use is it? He'll end up just like the others. Running behind city people, forgetting his roots. Another voice added. These dreamers only bring shame when they fail. He'll come crawling back to the fields. The laughter stung more than I wanted to admit. Success, I realized, didn't just bring pride. Brought envy. And envy has teeth. One evening my cousin cornered me. His face was hard, his tone cruel. You think you're special because you topped one exam. Do you know how many boys go to the city and come back broken? You'll be the same. I tried to walk away, but he grabbed my arm. Remember this. Your stars won't feed you. Your family's sweat does. Don't forget where you came from. I didn't reply. But his words dug into me. Still I kept pushing. My father sold part of our land to pay for my admission in the city. It was a decision that divided the house. My brother exploded. You'll ruin us. For what? For his books. For his stars. What if he fails? The silence after his words was unbearable. My father didn't answer. But I saw his shoulders slump. That night I couldn't eat. The food tasted like ash. My dreams felt heavy with guilt. I told myself, if I fail, it won't just be my dream that dies. It will be my family's future too. The city was another world. Tall buildings, endless traffic, students with expensive bags and clothes. I felt like an intruder. My accent was mocked. My shoes laughed at. Even my books looked small compared to theirs. But I couldn't let that stop me. I studied harder than ever. Each night whispering to myself, I have no backup. This has to work. And yet, cracks began to show. Money was tight. I skipped meals to save coins for books. I worked part-time, cleaning floors in a hostel, just to buy paper and pens. My classmates went to cafes, bought extra guides, hired tutors. I had none of that. There were nights I wanted to quit. Nights I stared at my reflection, wondering if my cousin had been right. One such night my sister's letter arrived. She had drawn stars at the corner of the page. Whenever you feel small, remember you are chasing the biggest things of all. Don't stop. I held the paper against my chest, tears wetting the ink. Her words became my anchor. But life is never just struggle and hope. Sometimes, betrayal hides in places you least expect. During a group project, I shared my notes with a friend I trusted. The next day, he submitted my work as his own. When the teacher praised him, I froze. My words, my effort. Stolen. When I confronted him, he laughed. You're just a farmer's boy. No one will believe you. You should be grateful I even let you sit with me. That was the first real taste of betrayal. Small one, but sharp enough to bleed. It didn't just hurt. Changed me. From that day I stopped trusting easily. I studied alone, worked alone, dreamed alone. The loneliness was heavy, but safer. And yet, deep down I knew, this was just the beginning. Because destiny doesn't break you all at once. It prepares the cracks, slowly, patiently, until the moment it shatters everything. And mine was coming soon. The city was dazzling, but it was also merciless. Every day felt like a test, not just in the classroom but in survival itself. I woke at dawn to clean the hostel floors. The stench of damp walls and bleach filling my lungs. By the time I sat in class, my fingers were raw, my body aching. But I kept my head down, kept writing, kept pretending I belonged. Sometimes, belonging is the hardest exam of all. One evening, as I left the library, I heard laughter behind me. A group of students leaned against the gates, their sneakers spotless, their shirts pressed. "Hey, farmer boy," one of them called. "Tell us, do you use a tractor to get here or just ride a buffalo?" Their laughter echoed against the walls. Sharp, cruel. I clenched my fists but said nothing. Words could not feed me. And fights could cost me everything. Ill. The shame clung to me like a second skin. Days bled into nights, my body weakening with skipped meals. I often pretended to be full when my roommates offered food, hiding the rumble of my stomach. Pride is strange. It feeds you even as it starves you. And then, the letter came. My father had written in shaky handwriting. The harvest had failed. Rain was scarce. The land dry and cracked. They were struggling to pay the hostel fees. My chest tightened. I read the letter again and again, as if the words might change. But they didn't. That night I couldn't breathe. All I heard were my brother's words. "What if he fails? You'll ruin us all." For the first time, quitting didn't feel like cowardice. Felt like mercy. But destiny has a cruel way of testing you just when you're ready to give up. The next week, our professor announced a special exam, a scholarship test. The winner's fees would be covered for 2 years. It felt like the universe was dangling a lifeline, but also sharpening its blade. I threw myself into preparation. Every waking moment became study. My books grew heavy with notes, my fingers smudged with ink. Barely slept. Barely ate. But desperation is a double-edged sword. Sharpens you, and it breaks you. On the day of the exam, I walked into the hall with trembling legs. My stomach twisted in hunger. My eyes burned from sleeplessness. The paper landed on the desk, and my mind went blank. Not just blank. Me. Hello. The words swam, blurred, slipped away. My hands shook. My breath quickened. Panic rose like a storm. I tried to write, scratched a few lines. But the harder I pushed, the more the silence in my mind screamed back. Time slipped away. The bell rang. My paper was half empty. When I walked out, I couldn't even feel my feet. It was as if the ground had disappeared. The results came a week later. I had failed. Not just failed. Lost everything. The scholarship went to the very boy who had once mocked me. The one who had stolen my notes. He smiled at me as he collected his certificate, his words still echoing. "You should be grateful I even let you sit with me." Grateful. That night, I sat alone on the hostel roof, the city lights glowing far below. I thought about my father selling our land, my mother skipping meals, my brother bleeding in the fields. All for me. And here I was, empty-handed. Tears came, hot and relentless. But beneath them something else stirred. Seed. Small. Dark. But alive. I whispered into the night. They think I'll fail. They think I'll crawl back. They think I'm nothing. My fists tightened. My jaw. No. I'll prove them wrong. No matter what it takes. I'll rise. The vow was quiet. Almost invisible. Vows, once spoken in pain, rarely die. And though I didn't know it then, this was the beginning, the true beginning, because failure doesn't just break you. Sometimes, it builds the fire that refuses to be extinguished. And mine had just been lit. The letter from my father was still in my pocket, worn at the edges, words fading from how many times I had unfolded it. He wrote of selling a portion of our land to keep me in school. He wrote of hunger in the house, my mother eating less so my younger siblings could have more. He wrote of trust, that I was their only hope. Hope. But hope can turn into a weapon when it is betrayed. A week later I received another letter. This one not from my father, but from a neighbor back home. It was short, hurried, written with shaking hands. "Your brother took the money your father saved for you. He gambled it away. He lied. Your father doesn't know yet. We are ruined." My heart stopped. For a long time I couldn't breathe. The words blurred. My eyes burning. My brother. My own blood. I could still hear his voice in my head. What if he fails? He'll ruin us all. Now, it was him. He had ruined everything. The betrayal was deeper than anything I had ever felt. This wasn't a stranger mocking me, or a student stealing my notes. This was family. My family. The ground beneath me shifted. The world cracked. That night, I lay in my narrow hostel bed staring at the ceiling. My chest felt hollow, as though something had been ripped from me. I wanted to deny it, to believe it wasn't true. But the letter was real. The words were inked in truth. Denial. They came one after another. Waves crashing against me. And beneath them, something else. Anger. It rose slow, like smoke from a fire you don't notice at first. But it spread quickly, filling me, choking me. I whispered into the darkness. Why? Why would he do this to me? To us? But no answer came. Only silence. The next morning I couldn't concentrate in class. Equations, formulas, words, they all blurred. My pen slipped from my fingers. My body was there, but my mind was burning. By the third day, the anger had sharpened. It wasn't just pain anymore. It was a plan. Forming in shadows. If my brother had stolen from me, if he had gambled away our survival, then I couldn't let it go. Not this time. A thought struck me, dangerous and thrilling all at once. What if I take back what he stole? What if I make him pay? But how? I was hundreds of miles away. And my family was still under his roof. If I acted carelessly, I could destroy them all. What if someone finds out it was me? The question haunted me. It lingered in my chest like a warning. But revenge doesn't wait for permission. Starts as a whisper, then becomes a voice you can't ignore. I began gathering information. Late at night, when my roommates slept, I wrote letters to the same neighbor who had warned me. Slowly, the truth unraveled. My brother hadn't just gambled the money. He had lied to my father, said the university demanded extra fees. He had pocketed the money and spent it in secret, chasing his own pleasures. The betrayal cut deeper. He didn't just gamble. He used my father's trust as his weapon. That night, my decision crystallized. I would expose him. I would tear away the mask he wore before the entire family, before the whole village if I had to. But I couldn't do it blindly. If my father broke under the truth, the family would collapse. If the village discovered it too harshly, shame would destroy us. I had to be careful, precise. I began drafting letters. Careful ones. Anonymous ones. Each word measured like a blade being sharpened. I would send hints first. Little pieces of truth. Enough to raise suspicion. Enough to make cracks in my brother's lies. The first move of revenge had to be subtle. When I finally sent the first letter, my hands trembled. The paper felt heavier than stone. My heart raced as I slipped it into the post. Days later, the reply came. My father's words were short, strained. He had started questioning my brother. The man's answers were shaky. My father wrote, "Something feels wrong. I don't know if I can trust him anymore." I felt a rush. Part victory, part terror. The seed of revenge had sprouted. But revenge is never clean. It leaves ripples. Consequences you can't control. Because soon after, I learned my brother had discovered someone was exposing him. He didn't know it was me. Not yet. But suspicion is a dangerous thing. I had made my first move. Now, the game had begun. The first move had been made. And though no one knew it was me, the air between my brother and my father had begun to shift. I could almost see it in my mind. My father sitting at the worn wooden table, staring at my brother with suspicion burning in his eyes. My brother fidgeting, lying, trying to hold his crumbling mask together. For the first time, the power was shifting. But power is a dangerous thing. Once you taste it, you want more. I should have stopped. One letter was enough. The truth would come out eventually. Right. But something inside me whispered no. Not yet. Make him feel what you felt. The sleepless nights. The gnawing fear of failure. The weight of betrayal pressing like a stone on your chest. He deserved to feel it all. So I wrote again. This time I wasn't careful. The words came fast, sharp, fueled by rage. I described how he gambled, how he drank, how he whispered lies into our father's ears. Mailed it. And then waited. The reply came slower this time. When it finally arrived, my hands shook as I tore it open. My father's handwriting was uneven, angry. If this is true, I don't know what to do. He swears you are lying. He says jealous neighbors are poisoning me against him. But I see it now. His eyes, his lies. What kind of son betrays his own blood? My chest tightened. My plan was working. But with it came guilt, creeping in like a shadow. I imagined my father torn between two sons. One standing before him with smooth lies, the other far away, whispering truths through anonymous letters. Which voice would he believe? At night I couldn't sleep. I replayed every memory of my brother. His laughter when we were children. The way he protected me once when older boys mocked my torn shoes. He wasn't always a monster. He was once my ally. But betrayal has a way of rewriting the past. Each memory became poisoned, twisted. I reminded myself of the letter, the stolen money, the ruined trust. He had chosen his path. Still, doubt lingered. One evening, while staring at the cracked ceiling of my hostel, a thought chilled me. What if this destroys my father? What if my revenge doesn't punish my brother, but breaks the man who gave up everything for me? The fear almost stopped me. Almost. But then another letter came. This one from my mother. She wrote of hunger again. Of debts piling. She wrote that my brother had been demanding more money from my father, claiming it was for my education. I gripped the letter so tightly it nearly tore. More lies. More theft. The guilt inside me hardened into resolve. He wasn't just my brother anymore. He was a thief. Parasite. If I didn't act, he would bleed my family dry. So I escalated. This time, I didn't send the letter to my father. I sent it to the village elder. The elder was respected, feared even. His word carried weight. If he began questioning my brother, the whispers would spread like wildfire. When I dropped the envelope into the postbox, my heart pounded so loud I thought the world could hear it. That night, lying awake, the question returned, sharper than ever. What if someone finds out it was me? Because if they did, if my brother discovered my hand in this, the revenge wouldn't be mine anymore. It would be his. And I knew him well enough to understand. His revenge would be merciless. But still, I waited. Weeks later, another letter arrived. My mother again. Her words were shaky, almost unreadable. The elder came to the house. He questioned your brother in front of everyone. Your father's face was pale, his hands trembling. Your brother shouted. Called it all lies. But people are whispering now. They don't trust him. He knows someone is behind this. He is angry. So very angry. My hands went cold. The plan was working. The cracks were widening. But so were the dangers. 'Cause now, my brother wasn't just a liar. He was a cornered liar. And cornered liars are the most dangerous of all. I could almost feel his rage traveling across the miles. Searching. Hunting for the one who had betrayed him. And still, I wrote again. Because revenge is never satisfied with the first strike. It always hungers for more. The whispers had begun. I could feel them even from miles away. When my mother's next letter arrived, her words were laced with fear. Your brother is restless, short-tempered. He shouts at neighbors, argues with your father. He doesn't sleep. I think he knows someone is working against him. But he doesn't know who. My pulse quickened as I read. He was circling the truth. But still blind. Now. But I underestimated him. Because one thing about my brother, he was cunning. He always had been. Even when we were children. He could twist a story so convincingly that I ended up punished for his crimes. Now, with his position threatened, he would fight harder than ever. The next letter wasn't from my mother. It was from him. I stared at the envelope, my name scrawled in handwriting I knew too well. My hands trembled as I opened it. Inside only a few words. I know it's you. My blood turned cold. He knew. Somehow through suspicion, instinct, maybe even my mother's unguarded words. He had connected the dots. I felt my chest tighten, a suffocating pressure. The hostile walls seemed to close in around me. What now? Should I stop? Should I confess? Should I beg forgiveness before his wrath found me? But another part of me whispered, "Oh, don't break now. He only suspects. He doesn't have proof. He's bluffing." So I wrote nothing back. Days turned to weeks. Then a letter from my mother again. This time her handwriting was frantic. "Something terrible happened. Your father collapsed after an argument. The doctor says his heart is weak. Your brother blames you. He says your letters poisoned father's mind. He shouts that you are ungrateful, that you are trying to destroy the family from afar." The paper shook in my hands. My revenge, the thing I thought would expose him, was destroying the one man I loved most. I wanted to scream, tear the pages apart, run back to the village. But I couldn't. I was trapped. My studies, my future, they all hung in the balance. And yet, a darker truth settled inside me. I couldn't stop now. 'Cause if I did, all of this, all the pain, all the damage would be for nothing. I had to finish what I started. So I made the riskiest move yet. I returned home. When I stepped into the village after months away, the air felt heavier. Eyes followed me. Whispers chased me. And then I saw him, my brother, standing in the courtyard, arms folded, a sneer carved across his face. "Finally," he said, his voice low, dangerous. "The ghost returns." I swallowed hard. "Where's father?" I asked. "In his bed." "Because of you," he snapped. I felt the words cut into me. But I didn't flinch. Instead I stepped closer, my voice calm. "Because of me. Or because of what you've been hiding?" His eyes narrowed. For a moment, silence hung between us. Then he laughed. Cold, sharp, bitter. "You always were jealous," he whispered. "Always wanted to be the hero. But you'll never be me." And in that moment, I saw it. The fear behind his anger. The cracks in his armor. He wasn't untouchable anymore. I leaned in. My words barely a breath. "No, I'll never be you. That's why I'll win." His face darkened. His jaw clenched. And I knew then, this wasn't just about revenge anymore. This was war. The days that followed my return felt like walking on cracked glass. Every step dangerous. Every word sharp enough to cut. My brother prowled the house like a caged animal, snapping at our mother, glaring at me whenever I entered the room. He didn't need to say it. His eyes screamed, "I will destroy you before you destroy me." Kept my distance. But not my silence. At night, I slipped through the old family chest, gathering papers, receipts, letters he thought long forgotten, proof of debts, money he had stolen from father's harvest sales. Copied every number carefully. My hand shook as I wrote, but my resolve hardened. This wasn't just suspicion anymore. This was evidence. One night, as I sat hunched over the papers, a shadow fell across the door. "You think you're clever, don't you?" His voice froze, my pen still in my hand. Slowly I lifted my head. He leaned against the doorframe, arms crossed, his smile cruel. Digging in father's chest. Stealing papers. He clicked his tongue. "You'll regret this." My heart hammered. But I forced my voice steady. "Not as much as you'll regret what you've done." His smile faltered. For the first time, I saw real anger flash across his face. He stepped closer. His hand slammed down on the desk, scattering the papers. "You think anyone will believe you," he hissed. "You're a boy playing hero. While I built everything this family has." "Built?" I spat back. "You stole. You lied. You crushed everyone who trusted you. Now, I'm going to show them who you really are. For a moment, silence stretched, heavy, suffocating. Then he whispered, low and venomous, "If you move against me, I'll take you down with me." And I knew he meant it. From that moment it became a race. I reached out quietly to neighbors, the same ones he had cheated, to merchants who had been underpaid, to the farmer whose land he borrowed but never returned. One by one their voices joined mine, cautious at first, then louder. But my brother wasn't idle. He spread rumors faster than wildfire. He painted me as the ungrateful son, the jealous sibling trying to destroy him out of spite. Market whispers followed me. In the mosque, people avoided my eyes. Even some relatives began to doubt. "What if he's right?" my uncle asked. "What if you're making all this up?" The ground beneath me trembled. Every move I made, he countered. Every truth I tried to reveal, he smothered in lies. And then, the threats began. Anonymous notes slipped under my door. "Leave or you'll regret it." Tools missing from the shed. My schoolbooks torn. A dead crow left on the step one morning. Its wings spread wide, bloodied. I knew it was him. His warning. But if he wanted me afraid, he miscalculated. Because instead of fear, I felt something else rising inside me. Cold, sharp hunger. Not just to expose him, to break him. The night it all boiled over came unexpectedly. Village meeting, called by the elders after weeks of rumors, letters, and tension. The courtyard filled with neighbors, cousins, relatives. Lanterns flickered against tense faces. And there we stood, my brother and I, side by side but miles apart. The elder cleared his throat. "Enough whispers. Tonight the truth comes out." My brother stepped forward first. His voice strong, his words dripping poison. "He is jealous," he declared, pointing at me. "He left this home to chase his own dreams. And now he returns to ruin mine. Every letter, every story lies. He wants to see me fall." Murmurs rippled through the crowd. Then it was my turn. I felt my knees weaken, my heart pound. But I held the papers high. "Are these lies?" shouted. "Receipts of harvests he sold without father's knowledge. Debts unpaid. Land stolen. Do you think I forged them?" Faces turned to him. His jaw tightened. He opened his mouth, then closed it. For the first time his mask cracked. The silence was louder than any denial. And in that silence, he knew. I had drawn blood. That night, after the meeting, I walked back through the village. Some people avoided me. Others nodded in quiet support. But the war wasn't over. Because in my brother's eyes, as he stared at me across the courtyard, there was no surrender, only rage. And I realized, this wasn't just about exposing him anymore. This was about survival. Either I destroyed him completely, or he would destroy me. The night after the village meeting, I couldn't sleep. The papers were locked away in a box under my bed. But they burned in my mind like fire. My brother's glare haunted me. That promise of destruction in his eyes. I knew he wouldn't stop. He never did. And if I waited for him to make the next move, it would be my end. So I made mine first. It began with the land. For years, he had claimed ownership of a field that was never his. The rightful owner, an old farmer named Karim, had been too afraid to speak. My brother had paid him a fraction of its worth, threatened him into silence. But Karim still had the deed. And one night, I slipped into his hut, lit only by a single oil lamp. He sat hunched, his hands shaking as he unfolded the old parchment. "This will ruin him," Karim whispered. "That's the point," I said. He hesitated, glancing toward the door. "And what about you, child? Once he knows it was you." "He already knows," I cut in. "And he's already trying to destroy me. So let him come." Karim studied me for a long moment. then slowly handed over the deed. And with that one fragile piece of paper, my first real weapon was in my hand. The next morning I walked into the district office. The clerk raised an eyebrow as I slid the parchment across his desk. "This land," I said firmly. "It isn't registered under my brother's name. It belongs to Kareem. The documents prove it." The clerk scanned the parchment, frowned, compared it to the records, and then, with a sigh, he nodded. "You're right." My pulse raced. It had worked. By evening, whispers spread through the village like wildfire. The land wasn't his. He had lied, cheated, stolen. His empire had a crack, and cracks spread. My brother stormed into the courtyard that night, his rage barely contained. "You did this," he roared, shoving me against the wall. "You think you've won. You've only started a war you can't finish." I stared into his furious eyes, and for the first time in my life, I didn't flinch. Then let it be war. What followed was chaos. Neighbors he had cheated came forward, emboldened by Kareem's victory. One by one, debts were exposed, lies untangled. Merchants he had underpaid demanded justice. Relatives he had deceived began asking questions. The mighty reputation he had built began to crumble, piece by piece, under the weight of his own corruption. But with every strike I dealt him, he struck back harder. He bribed officials, spread darker rumors, claimed I was working with outsiders to steal the family's honor. And the scariest part, some people believed him. Even as his world cracked, he still had power. And power makes desperate men dangerous. The threats escalated. One night, I found my window shattered. A rock lying on the floor with a note tied around it. "Or you won't live to see the end of this." Another evening, our mother begged me through tears to stop. "He's your brother," she cried. "Do you want to see him ruined? Do you want to tear this family apart?" I swallowed the lump in my throat, the ache in my chest. "Mother," I whispered, "he's the one tearing us apart. I'm just showing the truth." But the truth was heavy, and it didn't feel like victory yet. Felt like drowning in fire. The breaking point came when he tried to silence me permanently. I was walking home late, the streets empty, when I heard footsteps behind me. Turned. Too late. Hand shoved me hard. I stumbled, barely catching myself before hitting the stones. Two men loomed in the shadows, their faces hidden but their intent clear. "Your brother sends his regards," one of them hissed. I felt the blood drain from my face, but fear turned quickly into fury. "You tell him," I spat, "that no matter what he does, the world will know the truth." They lunged, fought back, desperately, wildly. Somehow I escaped, bloodied, bruised, but alive. And as I staggered into the night, I realized something. This was no longer about revenge. It was survival, and the only way to survive was to end him completely. That night, as I cleaned the blood from my face, I stared at my reflection. The boy who once wanted only peace was gone. In his place stood someone colder, harder, someone who would not rest until my brother had nothing left to stand on. The first move of revenge had landed. The cracks in his world were spreading. But the final strike, the one that would break him beyond repair, was still to come, and I was ready. The night of the festival was thick with sound, drums, laughter, voices carrying through the air like smoke. But all I could hear was the echo of his words. "You've started a war you can't finish." Tonight I would finish it. I had waited, patiently, carefully. For months, I collected his sins like stones. Each theft, each bribe, each threat. And tonight, I would throw them all at once. The courtyard was filled with neighbors, relatives, elders from the village. Lanterns glowed against the walls, casting long shadows. He stood at the center, laughing, drinking, as if the world still bowed at his feet. But tonight, the world would watch him fall. I stepped forward. The crowd parted slightly, murmuring. They could feel it. Something was about to break. He turned, and when his eyes found me, his smile froze. "What are you doing here?" His voice was low, dangerous. I held up the folder in my hand. Thick, heavy, bursting with his lies. "Finishing what you started." Gasps rippled through the crowd. "What is this performance?" he barked, trying to keep his composure. "Another trick to shame your own blood." I took a deep breath. My voice didn't shake. "This isn't performance. It's truth." I opened the folder. My hands didn't tremble. "Years ago, you stole Kareem's land. Here is the deed. Here are the records." I held them high so the elders could see. "You took loans from merchants and never paid them back. You threatened farmers into giving you their crops for half their worth. You bought officials. You bribed, you lied, you cheated." Every sentence fell like a hammer. The crowd stirred, shifting uncomfortably. He tried to laugh. "These are lies. Forged papers. Stories made up by bitter fools." I stepped closer. "Then why are they signed? In your hand?" I flung the ledger forward. Pages spilled across the ground. His own handwriting, his own seal. The silence was deafening. His face turned crimson. He lunged forward, grabbing me by the collar. "You think this will destroy me?" he hissed. "I am this village. Without me they are nothing. Without me, you are nothing." I met his glare. "No. Without truth, you are nothing." The elders moved forward, pulling us apart. One of them bent down, picking up the papers with trembling hands. He scanned them, his brows furrowing deeper with each line. Finally he looked up. His voice carried across the courtyard. "These documents are real." The crowd erupted. Cries, accusations. And my brother, for the first time, looked afraid. He tried to shout over them. "They're all against me. They want what I built. Don't you see? He's poisoning you with lies." But the voices drowned him. "Thief! Liar! Shame!" The words cut sharper than knives. And I stood there, silent, watching the empire he built on lies collapse around him. His eyes snapped back to me. "You did this." His voice shook with fury. "You think you've won. But you've only destroyed yourself too." I tilted my head. "No, brother. I destroyed the monster you became." He lunged again, desperate, broken. But this time hands restrained him. Neighbors he once ruled over now held him down. The mighty had fallen, and all it took was truth. I turned to the crowd. My voice cut through the chaos. "Tonight, you've seen who he really is. The man who claimed to protect you was the one who destroyed you. Do not let fear keep you silent anymore. Not against him. Not against anyone." The air was electric. People shouted in agreement. The spell of his power was broken. And for the first time in years, I felt something close to freedom. But deep down, I knew it wasn't over. Because men like him don't fall quietly. And the most dangerous man is the one who has nothing left to lose. The courtyard had become a storm. Voices shouting, lanterns flickering, dust rising from frantic feet. My brother thrashed against the neighbors, restraining him. His face twisted in rage, fear, and disbelief. "You'll regret this," he roared. "I'll ruin you. Everyone will know you are nothing without me." I stepped closer, my voice calm, cutting through the chaos. "No. Tonight everyone knows the truth. And the truth sets people free. Not monsters." He spat at me. "Monster. You. I am the one who built this family. Who fed you, protected you. And you stabbed me in the back." I didn't flinch. "You built lies. And lies fall faster than walls of sand." Then he lunged, full force. A sidestep. He crashed into a lantern, flames leaping. People screamed. Smoke filled the courtyard. Chaos erupted. I grabbed the ledger, the proof of his crimes, and held it high. "Do you see this?" I shouted over the crackle of fire. "Your empire, your lies, your betrayals, all here, Oh, real. Now. Everyone sees you for what you are. The crowd shouted in agreement. Faces I once feared now stared at him with eyes full of contempt. His hands clawed at the papers. Take them away. Burn them. They're lies. I shook my head. No. You've burned enough lives with your lies. Now the truth burns for you. In his desperation, he swung at me again. This time, a neighbor shoved him to the ground. The ledger fell, pages scattering across the courtyard like autumn leaves. He scrambled to gather them, but the villagers were faster, taking them away, exposing every document to the light. You think you've won? He screamed, voice raw, trembling. I'll fight till my last breath. I stepped back, watching him struggle, the weight of his lies finally crushing him. Yes, I said quietly. And this is your last breath of control. For a long moment, he lay on the ground, panting, the fury slowly giving way to fear, then despair. I took a step closer, kneeling beside him. You chose the wrong path, brother, I whispered. Every lie, every betrayal, led you here. And now, everyone knows who you truly are. His chest heaved. He opened his mouth, tried to argue, to justify, to scream. But no words came. Only silence. The elders stepped forward, examining the documents, nodding gravely. This is undeniable, one said. He has lived in deception, stolen from those who trusted him, and harmed his own family. Justice cannot ignore this. The villagers murmured in agreement. A wave of truth washing over the courtyard. Finally, I stood. My eyes met his. This ends tonight, I said simply. And I turned to the crowd, voice steady, commanding. Let this be a lesson. Lies, greed, and betrayal can rule only for so long. Truth and courage are stronger than fear. My brother's shoulders slumped. The fight drained from him. The fire still flickered around us, casting shadows on his crumpled form. And I realized, the monster he had been all these years was gone. All that remained was a broken man, exposed, powerless, and alone. The air was thick with relief, tension, and the unspoken acknowledgement. The war was over. But in that silence, I understood something crucial. Revenge had a cost. I had won. But it had changed me, hardened me, made me someone I barely recognized. And yet, for the first time in years, I felt the weight lift. The lies were gone. The truth stood tall. And my family could breathe again. The courtyard was silent now. Only the crackling of the last lanterns and the faint murmur of villagers remained. My brother lay slumped on the stones, his chest heaving, the weight of his lies pressing down on him like a physical force. He raised his head, eyes wild, searching, accusing. You think this ends here, he rasped. I'll rise again. You haven't seen the last of me. I knelt beside him, calm, unshakable. No, I said quietly. You won't rise again. Not after everything you've done. Not after everything you've taken. I could see the remnants of the man he used to be. The brother I had once loved. But it was buried beneath layers of greed, rage, and deceit. I didn't hesitate. I reached for the final proof. The ledger containing his most damning secrets. Loans, bribes, and manipulations so deep that anyone who read them would never trust him again. The villagers watched silently, waiting. I spoke, my voice cutting through the cold night air. Everyone here. You've seen what happens when a person is allowed to rule through fear. But fear doesn't last. Lies don't last. And men like him, they can be exposed. I opened the ledger, revealing the last page. Here is the truth, I said, turning it toward the crowd. Every deception, every threat, every stolen moment of happiness he caused, laid bare. The murmurs grew into shouts. Accusations echoed. And my brother's face paled as he saw the scope of exposure. He tried to argue, to twist the story. But no one listened. His voice had lost its power. You're destroying me, he whispered, barely audible. I shook my head. No. You destroyed yourself. Then the final blow. I stepped back, letting the villagers see the full extent of his betrayal. Justice is not mine to give, I said. It's yours to witness. Let the community decide what a man who steals, lies, and betrays deserves. An elder nodded gravely. We see clearly now. The man who once ruled through fear has been unmasked. He will answer for his actions. My brother's shoulders slumped. The fight gone from him. He whispered something barely audible. You were always smarter than me. Always stronger than me. Even when I thought I controlled everything. I didn't respond. Words felt empty now. Instead, I turned to the villagers, my voice soft but firm. Remember this night. Let it remind you that truth can never be silenced, and justice finds a way. Even through those we love most. The crowd slowly dispersed. Some nodding, some shaking their heads in disbelief. And a few glances at me that carried gratitude, respect, or relief. I stayed back, watching my brother. A man stripped of all power. A man I had loved and lost. The lanterns flickered, casting long shadows over the stones. The night was quiet. But inside me a storm raged. Revenge had been achieved. But the victory felt hollow. I approached him once more. Crouching beside the fallen figure. You were my brother, I whispered. And I swore I'd never forgive you. Now, everything you loved is gone. Because you chose the wrong path. Tears glistened in his eyes. The first sign of vulnerability I had ever seen. I know, he whispered. And I deserved this. I see it now. I see everything. The night stretched on. And though the war was over, the cost remained. I had won. But the scars, the tension, the loss of innocence, those would stay with me forever. The courtyard was emptying slowly. Lanterns flickered, casting long shadows across the cobblestones. I stood alone, save for my brother. Still seated on the ground, silent, broken. 4 months. Years even. I had imagined this moment. The confrontation. The exposure. The fall of the man who once ruled my life with fear. But reality was heavier than any daydream. He looked up at me, eyes hollow. A mixture of shame, rage, and something like regret. You destroyed me, he whispered. Every secret, every lie, every connection. You left me with nothing. I shook my head slowly. The weight of my own words pressing against me. No, I said softly. I didn't destroy you. You destroyed yourself. You chose deception over love, lies over family. Fear over honesty. This is the consequence. He laughed bitterly. Dry, hollow sound. Consequence, he spat. This is revenge. And revenge will eat you too. You think you're free. But you'll see. The price is higher than you know. I didn't flinch. I accept the price, I replied. Because the truth had to come out. And then, he did something I didn't expect. He smiled. Just slightly, but it was enough to cut through the tension. You were always clever, he said. Always one step ahead. Can't fight you. And I won't try. Perhaps. You were always the stronger one. I stared at him, my chest tight. My heart aching. You should have been the brother I needed, I said quietly. But you weren't. Now. It's over. The wind picked up. Tossing leaves across the courtyard. Lanterns swayed, shadows danced. The villagers had all gone, leaving us alone. For the first time in years, silence reigned. I knelt beside him, studying the man he had become. Broken. Exposed. Alone. You know, I whispered. I didn't want it to end this way. I wanted justice, not this. Ruin. But you left me no choice. He nodded slowly. Eyes downcast. I know, he said. And I deserved it. Perhaps one day. I'll find forgiveness. But not from anyone here. Only from myself. I stood taking a step back. Feeling the weight lift slightly from my shoulders. The ledger, the letters, the evidence. All of it had done its work. The truth had triumphed. And yet, The victory was bittersweet, because in the ashes of his fall, I saw what revenge truly costs. Doesn't heal wounds. It doesn't restore trust. It only balances the scales and leaves scars on both sides. The night deepened, stars glinting faintly overhead. I turned to leave, pausing at the edge of the courtyard, glancing back once at my brother, a man defeated yet alive, a man who had taught me, through pain, betrayal, and struggle, the weight of truth and the price of justice. And I knew, though the battle was over, the lessons would stay with me forever. The wind carried a whisper, faint but certain. Truth prevails. Always. And for the first time in years I believed it. The days after that night were quiet, almost eerily so. The village returned to its rhythm, but the echoes of what had happened lingered. People avoided my brother now. Not out of fear, but out of disappointment, disbelief, and understanding. And I walked through the streets carrying a weight I had never known before. I visited Karim first, the old farmer whose land had been stolen. He shook my hand with a firmness I hadn't felt in months. "Justice," he said simply. "Not vengeance. You showed them the truth. And now they can live without fear." I nodded, but the relief didn't reach me fully, because revenge had been sweet. Yes, satisfying in its moment of victory. But it had also carved a hollow inside me, a quiet ache I couldn't ignore. My mother approached me one evening, eyes red from crying. "Everything is ruined," she whispered. "The family, your brother, the reputation. And yet, you feel nothing." I looked at her, feeling the weight of years of anger, betrayal, and confrontation. "I feel everything," I said. "But peace is a strange thing. It's not here yet. Maybe it will never be." She shook her head, reaching for my hand. "You did what had to be done," she said. "But remember, hearts heal slower than lies." I returned to the family home. The walls seemed emptier now. Rooms where laughter had once echoed were silent. Furniture untouched. Shadows stretching longer than they should. I realized revenge didn't restore life to what was lost. It didn't bring back the brother I once knew. It only cleared the path for truth, and left space for healing. In the marketplace, merchants who had once feared him now spoke to me freely. "You were brave," one said quietly. "You showed him and everyone else that deceit cannot hide forever." I nodded, smiling faintly, but inside a storm raged. Every smile I received, every nod of respect, reminded me of the price I had paid. Because victory had not been without cost. I thought of the ledger, the letters, the evidence that had toppled him. I had won. But the act of exposing, confronting, and fighting back had changed me. The fire that had burned inside me through months of planning and confrontation now settled into a quiet ember. It was a reminder of the man I once was. The boy who had simply wanted a family that loved and trusted him. And the man I had become. Hardened, wary, and aware of the darkness in human hearts. The villagers began to rebuild their trust. Slowly, carefully. Families reconciled. Old wounds healed over time. But my relationship with my brother remained fractured beyond repair. He existed now as a cautionary tale. A man who had wielded power carelessly and lost everything. And I existed as the one who had survived. The one who had ensured the truth was known, yet felt the deep, unshakable cost. Even in moments of quiet, I felt the echo of those nights. The confrontation, the fear, the rush of power and control slipping from his hands. I sometimes woke in the middle of the night, heart pounding, haunted by the memory of his eyes. Full of rage, disbelief, and vulnerability all at once. I reminded myself, he was gone. The war was over. But my soul carried fragments of him. Fragments of my own choices. And the scars of revenge. And yet, amidst the emptiness, I discovered something unexpected. A sense of clarity. Truth, though painful, had a strength that lies never could match. And though my heart ached from the battle, from the family lost, and the brother gone, I understood finally that justice is not sweet. It is necessary. This was the lesson I carried forward. Revenge may satisfy the desire for retribution, but it leaves traces. Scars that linger longer than the moment of victory. And peace, real peace, is not the absence of struggle, but the acceptance of consequences. The village moved on, but I could feel the invisible cracks left in the lives around me. Neighbors whispered in hushed tones as I walked by. Some praised my courage. Others pitied the price I had paid. I learned that truth, though liberating, does not erase pain. It simply illuminates the shadows where lies once thrived. I visited my brother once more. Not out of desire to reconcile, but out of necessity. He was sitting alone in the small room he had been confined to since the exposure. His shoulders slumped, face hollow, hands trembling. "You should leave," he whispered when he saw me. "I know," I replied softly. But I had to see the aftermath. Had to see if the truth had reached its end. He looked up at me, eyes glossy. "I never realized how far I'd fall," he admitted. "Not just from the village's respect, but from your trust. That loss, it burns more than anything else." I didn't answer. Words felt insufficient. Instead, I placed the final pieces of evidence on the table before him. "See the consequences of your choices," I said quietly. "Not to humiliate, but to remind you of the life you've lost." He nodded slowly, absorbing the weight of each line, each signature, each betrayal laid bare. Days turned into weeks, and slowly I returned to normal life. Yet normal felt different now. My heart was heavier, yet clearer. I had claimed victory, exposed the lies. And yet, every victory came with its scars. I began to focus on rebuilding myself. Not the family I had lost, not the brother I had loved. For me, I walked through the fields where I had once played as a child, feeling the sun on my face. The wind carried memories of laughter, of innocence lost, of battles fought. And I realized, the strength I had gained wasn't from the victory itself, but from surviving, from navigating the chaos, from holding to truth when everything around me demanded silence. I also realized something profound. Revenge satisfies only temporarily. Doesn't heal wounds. It doesn't restore trust. It doesn't bring back the time stolen, the laughter silenced, or the love betrayed. But it offers clarity. It reveals who people truly are, and who we become when pushed to the edge. Months later, I found moments of peace. Small ones. A quiet morning by the river. The smell of rain on the soil. A neighbor greeting me with genuine warmth. These moments reminded me that life continues. Even after betrayal, after confrontation, after justice served. And though the scars remained, visible and invisible, they also reminded me of resilience. I reflected on my journey often. The brother I had once adored, the betrayal that shattered my world, the planning, the confrontation, the climax of vengeance, had changed me irrevocably. I was no longer the naive child who had trusted blindly. I was someone tempered by fire. Someone who understood the depths of human desire, greed, and fear. Yet I had also learned compassion, patience, and the value of truth above all. Looking back, I realized the final lesson. Revenge is a path, not a destination. It demands courage, sacrifices, and acceptance of consequences. And when the dust settles, what remains is not always joy or triumph, but understanding, growth, and the unshakable knowledge that one stood for what was right. Even when the cost was immeasurable, I walked away from the remnants of my brother's empire one last time. Lanterns flickering in the distance. The village settling into its rhythm. I had survived the war of lies, betrayal, and revenge. I had exposed the truth. And I had learned, sometimes victory is bittersweet, but necessary. I want to hear from you. In one word, how did this story make you feel? Was it satisfied, shocked, heartbroken, or empty? Drop your answer in the comments below. And don't be afraid to share your own experiences. Have you ever been betrayed by someone close to you? Or felt the urge for revenge? Your stories matter, and I want to know, because sometimes sharing our pain helps us understand it, and maybe even heal.